welcome back. We're going to talk about separating our baby sweater. Of course, the one you're knitting is going to be somewhat larger than this, and I believe everyone is at the point where they need to separate the body from the sleeves. Now, in this particular project, we will be isolating the sleeves and working those at the same time with two separate balls of yarn. Most of the time when you're working a sweater from the neck down, as we're doing, you will want to put the sleeves on holders and work the body. It's a little easier. This method is not the easiest or most convenient or most desirable method, but the point of doing it this way for this project is to be able to learn how to manage two balls of yarn and do two different things and keep track of all of that at the same time, which you hear that phrase quite a bit and see that phrase quite a bit in different knitting patterns. So it's a good idea to get comfortable with it, and that's the point of doing it this way in this particular sweater. And of course you'll need two balls of yarn. If you don't have two balls of yarn, you have just one big ball of yarn as I have here, what you can do is wind off what you think you'll need for the second sleeve. Now we're making a baby size sweater, so for the second sleeve you're only going to need maybe about 100 or 150 yards, so you don't have to wind off very much. Or you can just use the second ball of yarn. That'll work. Okay, so let me go over what you're going to do. So once you've knit your sweater to the size that you're after, in our case we wanted 4.5 inches from the neck to the center of the back here. I'm also going to show you how to put in a horizontal thread marker, which you don't have to do, and I'll tell you why, but you don't have to do it, but it's a good idea to know how to do it, just in case you ever want to. Okay, so the directions tell you to work across the front, which I'm doing here, working across the front to the first marker. Now up to this point you have been increasing before and after each of the center 4 markers, but since we're separating now, we're not going to do that. I'm going to knit all the way up to there, and you can at this point remove the marker and put the stitches that you just knit onto a holder. You can use one of these guys. I'm sure you've seen these before. Looks like a giant safety pin, and just slip each of the stitches onto the stitch marker. You'll want to do this stitch by stitch. It's really challenging to try and slip them all in there together, and you'll want to not leave your knitting needle in there. Things will get really tight and uncomfortable. Okay, now that that's done, the directions tell you to cast on 2 stitches at the beginning of the sleeve and at the end of the sleeve. So here I am at the beginning. I'm going to use the cable cast on. Variation of the cable cast on. There are 2, one where you go between 2 stitches and one where you go through the center of the stitch itself. I'm going to use the where you go through the stitch itself. It's also called the knitted on cast on. So there's one. Go in again as if to, let me back up and do that one more time. So you're going to go into the stitch as if you're going to knit normally, pull up your stitch, but don't take that stitch off the left needle as you would when you're knitting. You're going to put the new loop back onto the left needle, and you can pull it snug. And then I'm going to go in again and cast on a second stitch. Okay, now that I've done that, I'll go ahead and knit across the sleeve stitches, and I'll put in the horizontal marker. So here I am knitting along. Now the directions tell you to put it across the center of the sleeve. That just means that work in kind of towards the middle and you can eyeball it. So before I put the horizontal marker in here, I just want to explain what the purpose of it is. It's a measuring tool so that you have somewhere to measure for the length of the sleeve, a straight line to measure from. You could also, in lieu of the horizontal marker, take one of these little stitch markers and actually put it on, well, I can't get it in there. Let me open this guy up. Actually get it onto there we are. Actually get it onto a stitch and then measure from the stitch marker. Okay, this is your other option. Okay, so a horizontal marker is just a contrasting color yarn, and you're going to hold it together with your working yarn and knit one stitch with both yarns held together. Then what you'll do is bring your yarn, which is the marker, forward and knit across until you're nearly to the end of your sleeve. Maybe you're going to work 5 or 6 stitches or 10 stitches or however many. Let's see, over here I had 2, 4, 6, so 2, 4. I'll put my marker here. That's kind of the center. Let me just knit one more. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marker, bring it back to the back again, and knit the next stitch together with both yarns held together, and then bring thread forward and knit to the end of the sleeve. Okay, so see what has happened? I now have a straight line to measure from. And of course this will get removed later on. You're not going to keep it in there. Remove this marker. Now the directions told me to cast on 2 stitches at the end. So you could, there's a few different ways of doing that. You could do an E-wrap cast on, which is just taking the yarn and wrapping it around your thumb and then putting that wrap on the needle. I don't generally like to do this cast on because it gets really tight to knit into and really loose at the underarm more so than the others. So I use a cable cast on like I did at the beginning, the same one, except I turn the work so that the back of the work is looking at me, and I go into the stitch. You could go into the stitch as if to purl. Pull your yarn over and take your stitch back as if to purl and stick it on the left needle and go into the stitch as if to purl. There's my 2 stitches, and then turn back around. Or you could do the knit version. Either way, this is going to be at the underarm, so it's not going to make a big difference. Okay, now I'm done with that sleeve, and the directions tell me to cast on, to join in my second ball of yarn. So I'll grab my yarn here, pull my needle through. Okay, so I'm going to leave this yarn, which is attached to the first sleeve. I'm going to leave it, and I'm just going to join in by knitting into the next stitch as if I was connected with my next next ball of yarn, and I will work across the back stitches. And when I get to the end of the back stitches, what I will do is place those stitches on the holder, just like I did the first part of the sweater. So here I am to the end of the back, taking my marker off, pulling my needle out so that the stitches don't fall off while I'm doing this other part. Give myself some more yarn here. Okay, and grab another stitch holder, and then slip each one of these stitches onto the stitch holder. You could also use, get this needle out of there. You could also use spare piece of yarn, another piece of yarn, a double pointed needle, another circular needle, anything just to keep the stitches from unraveling on you while you work the sleeves. So you don't necessarily need to run out and stock up on these safety pin type stitch holders if you're disinclined. Of course, when it comes to knitting stuff, we're rarely disinclined to buy. Okay, now what you're going to do, you've got your back stitches on a holder. You're going to pull your needle all the way out, okay, all the way out, and push the left needle tip into the other sleeve, and so that you can bring your right needle tip to work with, because the whole entire sweater is going to stay on the circular needle. Okay, so here's my yarn. I'm going to cast on 2 stitches, 1, 2, as I did before. On the second sleeve, you don't have to put a marker because you're going to be working both sleeves at the same time, so you don't really need a second marker unless you really want to be precise about things and feel you need to have both sleeves marked so that you can measure from them to make sure that they are indeed the same length. So you can if you want to, but you don't have to. So I'm just going to work across to the end of this second sleeve. End of the second sleeve. And here I am. Okay, and remove my marker. Now these remaining stitches we are not going to knit. I am going to put a little marker here to identify this side as the side that I did not knit. And I will grab, actually what I'm going to grab this time is another bit of yarn, just to show you how to put that on there, because it'll be good to show you how to put them on a thread marker. So here I am threading another yarn and getting that yarn out of the way. Okay, so all I'm going to do this time is just slip each stitch onto a tapestry needle, stitch by stitch, one by one. As I usually pull them off as if to purl. You can purl them off as if to knit, but that'll reorient your stitches, which you'll need to be careful how to put them back. I usually take them off as if to purl. Okay, and then pull your yarn through and then tie that with the secure bow or something that's secure enough so it won't come out undone on you while you're working the rest of the sweater, but at the same time won't be like Fort Knox to get off or get through when you want to retrieve your stitches. Okay, so that's secure. And here's my second sleeve, and I'm going to turn around because I got to cast on 2 stitches like I did before. I'll do it the purl way. Purl one and stick it onto the needle, and purl a second one and stick it onto the needle. And now I can, let me take the needle out so I can tell you what I'm going to do. Okay, so let me turn around. You're going to have something that looks really hectic. Okay, so what I've done is now I have the 2 fronts of the sweater isolated on holders and the back of the sweater isolated on holders, and each sleeve is still on the needles. Now this sleeve is on the cable while I work this sleeve, and then once I get through this sleeve it'll get transferred onto the cable and the needle tips will be ready for me to employ to work across the other sleeve. And you will be, technically you're knitting in a circle, you're just going around and around and around, but it's not real obvious that that's what's happening. Okay, and you will have a mess of yarn all over the place, just like this. And so working the sleeves at the same time will necessitate reorienting and cleaning up and repositioning the yarn almost every row, because otherwise it'll get all tangled. So thank goodness that it's a small sweater. You know, the other places where you use this method of 2 balls of yarn is on V-necks, when you're working a V-neck in pieces, or the crew necks of sweaters. A lot of times directions will tell you to bind off stitches across the neck and then attach a second ball of yarn and work both shoulders at the same time. So this would be a similar technique. And once you get through it on this little sweater, then you'll be able to handle it anywhere else. So okay, the directions tell me to now work both sleeves at the same time. So I'm just going to purl across the first sleeve. I'm going to purl across the first sleeve. Give myself some more yarn. Okay. And then once I get to the end of this sleeve, which I'm almost there, okay, here I am at the end of the sleeve. One more stitch. Okay, now to get to the other sleeve, all I'm going to do is pull my cable, pull my needle tip to position it where I need it. The yarn's out of the way. Okay, tighten it, doesn't fall apart on me. Okay, push my needle onto that and then pull it out of the other sleeve. So now I've jumped across the back and the yarn is waiting for me right where it needs to be so that I can work across this section. Okay, so 1, 2, and work across. And when I get to the stitch that's doubled up, that's for the horizontal stitch marker, I will knit through both together. And that's not going to affect anything because we're going to remove that marker at the end. And nobody will know that it had been in there as a measuring tool. Okay, when I get to the end of this sleeve that I've purled across, I will turn around, reorient myself again. My yarn's out of the way. Pull my needle. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to do what I did before. Pull on my needle till I get my needles where they should be. Now I just finished purling here, so I need to knit back, and you'll see, get the needles out of the way, that my yarns are right where they need to be in order for me to knit across the sleeve. So here I am, where I am going to start knitting across. I'll drop the yarn, and then over here is the other yarn for the other ball of yarn waiting for me to knit across. And I'm going to continue working that way. So I'll knit across here, turn around, purl back. This yarn will be waiting, purl back, and then knit across, purl back, and so forth until the sleeve is the length that I need it to be. Since this is my sampler, the directions tell you to knit for 1/2 inch without any shaping before you start the shaping for the sleeve decreases, but on my little sample I don't need to go more than the 1 row I've already gone. So the directions will tell you then to start your decrease rows, and what you will do is knit 2 stitches, and then slip, slip, knit, slip a stitch, slip a stitch, take your left needle, go through the front legs of both stitches that you just slipped, and then knit them together from that position. And that creates a decrease that points to the left, a left leaning decrease. Then you'll work across to the last 4 stitches. You'll have 4 stitches remaining on your left needle. 2, 4. Okay, I have 4 stitches remaining on my left needle, and then you'll do a knit 2 together. That's just go through 2 stitches as if they were one and knit them together, and that creates a stitch that leans to the right, a right leaning decrease. So what's happening is that the fabric is mirroring itself, and the grain of the fabric where the decreases are pointing towards each other like this. Okay, so I will drop that, pull my needle over, jump across the back, and go to the other sleeve and do the same thing again. Knit 2 stitches, knit my second stitch, white with the yarn, okay, and then slip, slip, knit again. So slip a stitch as if to knit, slip a stitch as if to knit, take the left needle tip, pick up both stitches that were just slipped with the left needle tip ending up in front of the right needle tip, and knit those 2 stitches together from that position. Then knit across to the end of the row. And then until there are just 4 stitches remaining on your left needle, 2, 4, and then knit 2 together and knit 2. Okay, there's that decrease. And then now what will happen is I will turn around, purl across, turn around, knit across, knit across. Now between decrease rows, I'm going to stick a marker on each row. This was a decrease row, so I will stick a marker here to let me know that I've already decreased. And what you'll do is you'll work half an inch between decrease rows in the pattern that you're working. For me, I would probably only work maybe 2 rows. A half an inch on the sweater size that you're making is probably going to be maybe 3 or 4 rows, and then you'll repeat this decrease row, and you'll continue working that until your sleeve is according to the directions, until you've repeated the decrease rows 5 times. So you've done 5 decrease rows with half-inch increments between them. Then we'll be ready for the next step, and we'll talk about that in class. And this mess will end up looking like a sweater, believe it or not. Okay, see you in class.